Well, welcome. It's lovely to see so many of you join us after lunch. Thank you. And it's great to be up here with three of Artesian's agri partners. What a session. I think there's a lot to unpack here around the role VC plays in industry, and I think there's a lot to unpack. So let's dive straight into it. From an Artesian perspective, we really see venture capital as a truly unique asset class. One that not only delivers financial returns, but also drives strategic and impact outcomes. And I think in 2025, more so now than ever, we're seeing a diverse range of strategic investors. We're seeing government organisations like RDCs, we're seeing universities, industry partners playing a really pivotal role, and that are actively leveraging VC to solve some of these critical industry challenges. So let's dive in. I want to start, I guess, first of all, on the role of venture capital investment in innovative agtech startups by RDCs and focusing on the sort of complementary distributed approach to traditional research and development. So maybe, Ron, we start here. You guys launched Grain Innovate 6 years ago. What opportunities or what prompted the shift or evolution, I guess, to complement those traditional R&D practices?
Yeah, thanks, Tor, and also it's great to be here and great to see such a great turnout. So thanks for the invitation. I think, for us, now is not really much, 8 years ago isn't really too much different to what it was 8 years ago. We very much interested in leaving no stone unturned. I guess our levy payers are really interested in us delivering a portfolio that, not only delivers those incremental gains, but is really also looking at making sure we're really exploring, some areas that are really going to deliver, some game-changing value as well. So I guess 8 years ago when we started looking at this, and we said that we've started investing 6 years ago, we're really looking, sort of observing overseas, a fair bit of activity happening, but perhaps in Australia that seemed to be lacking a little bit, and particularly in the agricultural and more particularly the grain space. So we were really interested in I guess, running a flag up the flagpole and saying that, with this fund, that the grains industry also wants to participate in this space. So that was what it was really all about, and what it's still all about now. And it certainly, we think has paid real dividends, as we think we've had a lot of success through that investment program, and it's very complementary to all of our other investment that GRDC does in very, very impact focused. Where it's an agile mechanism that's very complementary to other things we do, and it's all about delivering results, and successful companies and successful startups will get some of those things like adoption and impact, which we're really looking for.
Anthony, you've just announced the Hort Innovation Fund only a couple of months ago. What are you seeing? What sort of opportunities are you seeing here that this might fill for Hort Innovation's traditional R&D as well as the growers?
Yeah, thanks, Tor. Look, if grains can do it, horticulture can do it. And so we took a lot of learnings from the model that GRDC had applied and their partnership with Artesian. And we worked really closely with industry. Industry said to us, you guys need to change. And you guys need to have a sharper focus on innovation and really look at changing up the model and thinking outside of the traditional procurement approach, if you like, to innovation. And growers are under immense pressure at the moment in terms of cost of production. And on the flip side of that, looking at how do we encourage more consumers to eat fresh produce. And for those who are playing along at home, 9 out of 10 Australians don't eat the recommended dietary intake of 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit a day. So when we were designing the program, we were looking at, well, what's keeping growers up at night and how can we address their issues, and being really clear with what's the problem we're trying to solve. It sounds really elementary, but what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then on the flip side, we said, well, we need the fund to look beyond the farm gate. We need to look across the whole horticultural supply chain. So there's plenty of opportunities that we see in looking at cost of production issues, efficiencies in terms of post-farm gate to the consumer, and then also looking at food tech and innovation in that space. So I think horticulture, it's a thriving industry, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity as the fund matures.
Thanks. Jordan, I'll bring you in here from a corporate perspective. GrainCorp's fund's been up and running for 3 years now. what sort of industry role do you guys take, and how do you sort of see yourself working alongside RDCs?
Yeah, thanks, Tor. About 3 years or so, I guess we've had the GrainCorp Ventures Fund, but prior to that, we were doing a number of activities across not only R&D, but also working with kind of broader ag tech, food tech, animal nutrition community, both domestically and abroad. I think the formalisation of the GrainCorp Fund provides an opportunity for us to be a lot more structured in the way we engage that market, the way we participate in that market. And I think a key part of the difference perhaps, but also the connection back to the RDCs is the corporate in corporate venture capital. For us, it really is a clear, strategically aligned fund. It's very much tagged back to our core strategy, and we've done some of that work a few years ago to better define what exactly that is and where exactly we're going. And we really see corporate venture capital as one of the key tools in that innovation suite. In the sense of how we work with some of the RDCs, I mean, the RDCs are critical in supporting that early stage, specifically in the early stage for startups. So more specifically, that's around when we're trying to figure out product market fit, when we're trying to do some of the deep research in market, how do we leverage some of the pools of capital, the support, the networks there in order to drive traction and really get out of pure research and development and start to push into commercialisation. I think that's probably where we sit more into that space, and how we can pick up what's there and work combined with the RDCs, not only on the grain side of things, but I think across industries as well, as seeing a lot more crossover in that space.
Yeah.
I think just building off that point, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for the RDCs to align in this opportunity that's been presented, to think differently about R&D and innovation. And for those who are familiar, the federal government are undertaking a strategic examination of R&D in Australia that includes agriculture. And in that discussion paper, there is quite a bit of commentary around thinking about alternate investment vehicles and looking at where does innovation happen and how do you tap into that. And in particular, focus on working with the private sector and corporate. So picking up on that theme, for this to really support primary industries, the RDCs have to band together, and also working very closely with corporate ag. It's critical to get the runs on the board.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely seen that in practice as well. Certainly a whole different suite of partners, innovation partners, but also investors as well. And that's effectively bringing a lot more and a complementary investment into Australian ag problems, and that's been a real win, we think.
Absolutely.
There's been a bit of talk about risk in the market lately, and I think that it's worth probably talking to that. RDCs are levy funded, and you're very much aligned to the growers. Maybe we start with you, Ron. I guess sort of the traditional RD&E activities that are taking place, what risks associated with VC and startup investments are you sort of trying to mitigate internally, or, I guess sort of discussing with the growers?
Yeah, look, it's a very commercial model, and I think the major, risk or expectation or thing we want to mitigate is that enduring, technology access. Things can go a bit differently to our traditional partners. A business might change tack and change focus and move their focus away from grains or even agriculture. I think that there can be higher failure rates because we are very early stage and in that area. So and I think that failure can be for commercial reasons as much as it can be for technical reasons, which is the classic failure. Having said that, I think all of our portfolio, we work in the business of R&D, and we expect a level of failure as long as that's well managed. I think maybe the other risk is too, we mentioned earlier, being able to get to market earlier. So I think managing, that engagement as products, hitting the market perhaps, at an earlier stage as well. And I think that just requires really solid communication, across all of the participants around, how to manage that. Yeah.
It's interesting, I think, picking up on the risk side of things as well, at least from a GrainCorp perspective, and going back to my earlier point around the corporate and corporate venture capital, a lot of that, we acknowledge there's risk in what we're doing and take that on and willingly. I think part of it as well is understanding where we can actually add value and look to de-risk, or how do we support these companies through research development into commercialisation. So a large part of that is how do we bring our networks, our people? How do we engage growers? How do we bring the supply chain on the journey? How do we engage internally with relative subject matter experts across particular areas? The other part as well is building this out as a portfolio. It's critical from a GrainCorp perspective as it relates to innovation, but it's not the only tool in innovation. It's a really important one, and I think the further we get down the journey, the more we understand around that, and also figuring out where we can actually step in to provide some level of support or guidance or information that helps to de-risk or support go-to-market for some of these companies.
And Anthony, I guess.
Yeah, from our perspective, I mean, it started with a reset of our company strategy where industry and working with our directors and our organisation said, well, we need to think about how do we maximise investment and how do we do things differently. So to your point earlier, Jordan, having a clear strategy certainly provides a North Star. The second point to that is the board. I've had a tremendously supportive board that have looked at the organisational risk appetite and said, well, let's think about where we focus our investment culture and where do we place risk? Can we fail when it comes to innovation? And that reset of that culture from the top down gave the business and empowered our business to think differently about the models. And we went through a process, again, working really closely with industry. I know there's a few industry folk in the audience here today. Testing the models with them and said, will this work? Do you support it? Do you see it as a viable vehicle? And working from the top down and the bottom up, we ended up landing on the partnership with Artesian through an open, transparent, fair process. So, the final point I'll make is it's only a component. I think it's important to think about a balanced portfolio position when it comes to innovation. And the venture fund represents less than 10% of our innovation portfolio, with a lot of other traditional means of undertaking R&D. So, you have to balance it up in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and really look forward to the first investment that we announce, hopefully this side of financial year.
Not just to put pressure on.
Just on that topic of risk too, and I think it's also important to acknowledge, I guess, the risk of doing nothing as well. So, 6 years ago, if we hadn't gone ahead with Grain Innovate, at that time there wasn't a lot of capital available. I think there'd be quite a number of companies we invest in. We think that wouldn't have received that capital, that capital, or would have received less capital to grow. So
there's certainly the risk on the investment side, but I think there's the risk for industry of not doing something.
Yeah.
And I think there's an accountability there as well.
I think there's a massive opportunity, to attract investment into Australia. There's obviously a sovereign piece to this. We've got to look and back Aussie ingenuity, which is the front and centre for RDCs, but, opening up ourselves globally and putting the RDC and the model in the eyes of other investors across Southeast Asia and beyond, I think that's truly remarkable for RDCs to become, recognised globally as a place to do business with. So, there's a massive opportunity for the sector.
Yeah. I guess positioning for the Australian agtech ecosystem too. Anthony, maybe we'll start with you on that. So how does sort of RDC-backed startups, position the Australian ecosystem and the agri?
Yeah. I think we're very fortunate. We've got a massive network of growers and primary producers that for startups and those looking to make a mark, we provide that opportunity to have dialogue and connect you guys with industry. And thinking outside of our own backyard, the same will apply for attracting international investors into Australia. The first question is, well, let's identify the problem and let's identify the network that exists. So I think we're very fortunate we can connect the startups with primary producers and growers, and really help de-risk, I guess, that part of the pathway, and create a really solid platform for those startups to hopefully flourish.
Yeah, and that's been our, I think, again, our experience too. And I think that's, one of the other things we bring other than the financial is I guess, that connection and national as well. So we invest at a very early stage, and they can be quite often quite small enterprises to start with. And, that, I think, having that national footprint and and connection can really help, as well as some of our awareness-raising vehicles that we have. We have them participate in our update series, our ground cover type publications and things, and that's really trying to promote awareness of the technology platforms that they're trying to develop, not necessarily product focused, but certainly these are the types of results and outcomes we're trying to achieve through specific investments.
Yeah, I think very similar. Echo both the same points. From a GrainCorp perspective, we are razor focused on being able to add value and having channels to add that value. So practically, that looks like people, capabilities, and assets. Really, if we can't look to support in some way with that, it's probably not the investment for us. And we're really clear on being able to add that value back, or have that dialogue, create those channels, and look to support beyond just capital in. I think when we look at success of GrainCorp Ventures, of course, we want to make a return on that investment, and it needs to be viable and sustaining. We also look at a number of other metrics outside the pure financial return, and a lot of that is around the broader impact we have internally around innovation, the impact we can have on rural communities, on growers, on our supply chain, on our customers, and of course on GrainCorp. So kind of look at a broader suite of benefits and try and play that through as well in sense of what we can provide and how we can engage in a meaningful and helpful way.
Yeah.
Just building off that, I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that I see once we get the fund moving, is the ability to get data that perhaps we wouldn't have otherwise got through traditional R&D, and get some real commercial metrics. The number of growers that are being benefited or touching the R&D, the hectares of coverage. And I know GRDC, collect a lot of this data, and they've had that maturity, over 5 or 6 years to do that. But that's something that, we talk about investment impact. How do we translate investment impact? And data speaks. So if we can get those data points from the startups, and in partnership with Artesian, that's going to really demonstrate the investment from an RDC and the Commonwealth, mind you, into innovation in primary industry.
And there's obviously a few international corporates and startups that are here today, and we're obviously looking across all of the funds at international opportunities to bring technologies out to the Australian market. Is there a perspective there on the ability for RDCs to support that growth in market here?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're very mandate driven. We want to see impact in the grains industry, and we want to see impact for growers specifically. So those are two sort of hurdles, if you like. But beyond that, that's not to say that we don't sort of co-invest with things that might also have horticultural applications or applications in other industries. But if we can demonstrate impact and value for the Australian grains industry, we want to have a look at it, and we are really pretty agnostic about where that comes from.
Strategic roles, or I guess case studies, examples, probably more relevant, I think, for Jordan and Ron, with the funds sort of, have a few examples, I guess, of the value that you guys have been able to create or help create for these startups. Is there any specific examples? I know there's a couple in the room out there that are probably worth touching on, even local Queensland companies.
Yeah, better pick on pick on a couple of locals given where we are. But look, we think the whole, across the entire portfolio, there's really good examples. So it's always hard to cherry pick, but a couple of, I guess, the local examples. We had data farming and also swarm farm here. As really good solid examples that we've been investing in for quite a few years now, and we can see, Anthony mentioned we do monitor, I guess, adoption and those sorts of metrics, and you can see the growth in those companies has been really quite fantastic to see, and that national adoption too, which is fantastic. So
and has GRDC been able to play a role in that sort of wider adoption through your growers? Is that? Yeah,
well, certainly all of those participants have taken part in our awareness raising sort of mechanisms, if you like. Like I mentioned before, national grower updates and all those sort of things, as well as the funding themselves. But I think just also, so aside from that, that scaling too, I think some of those spillover benefits too. I mean, both of those companies have really grown. So you're getting, again, things like beyond grower impact, which we need. We're also seeing, regional jobs, regional manufacturing facilities being stood up and those sorts of things, which are really nice to see as well. Yep.
Yeah, I think interesting, kind of spoke more broadly before around some of the benefits and interactions we look to have, specifically with portfolio companies, and a number of them actually are GrainCorp customers now off the back of that. But perhaps just a slight tack on the point there. I think one of the more really interesting areas we see happening now is it's actually the early stage screening and pipeline conversations we're having with companies. Be able to articulate some of the challenges that we're seeing, whether that's in our supply chain or perhaps in some of our customer supply chain or with growers, and being able to support in just being really clear around what is that actual problem we're trying to solve, or how do we see that problem, and making sure we're getting solutions that are fit for that. Can think of several examples in that space that have had these early stage conversations with companies, specifically kind of in the seed stage and latter part of seed, where it's getting really clear on what is the actual challenge that we're seeing here, and how do we enable these early stage companies to immerse themselves in that challenge and see it and hear from it. And hearing from it isn't just me talking, it's how do we engage with our people more broadly. Incredible kind of research and development teams, upcountry and operations teams, and how do we put them in front of these startups prior to investment, prior to any kind of transaction related conversations, but just to talk around how does that actually work in the network and how does that deliver value. I think that's a really exciting and interesting area for us to explore.
I'm conscious of time that's ticking in front of us. I guess as we sort of do wrap up this session, what would you like to see more of at an industry level to help accelerate agtech innovation, locally, globally? Like what would you like to be seeing more of? And maybe Anthony?
Yeah, look, we certainly have designed this so that growers engage with the program. So obviously grower participation is critical, and that's either furnishing us with ideas and opportunities. We've got two great hires with Jesse Reader, who's sitting out there, and Maxi Jung. So speak to them or myself. And then on the other side of that, we would love to, look at how we can bring the startups onto horticultural production farms across Australia. So that'll be critical to the success.
Jordan?
I think mine's pretty simple: cross-industry and capital collaboration, really. The more we do, the more we realise that there's a lot of crossover between, for example, grains and horticulture. Obviously, we're GrainCorp, but very much involved as well from a livestock perspective, from an energy perspective, from a fats and oils perspective, from a broadacre grains perspective. So just seeing more of that crossover, I think there's more opportunity there to engage across industry, and then with different pools of capital as well, as we see it all playing a critical role in driving success. So.
And Ron? Yeah,
and from us, I think it's more, we're again, right up early stage, and so we're interested in seeing and hearing from, seeing more innovation, both internationally and also domestically, that, certainly from an investment perspective, we're open to new information, so come and see us and Artesian, really. So that's probably it for us.
Fantastic. Thank you.